And I'm starting the intro now. Hey, Gaming Thief.
This is Steve Downs, the voice of Master Chief, Spartan 117. Welcome to Quality Time, the KO Koala Entertainment podcast. Anthony and Skylar will take it from here. Master Chief, out.
Welcome to Quality Time, the KO Koala Entertainment Podcast. My name is Anthony Nicolosi.
And I'm Skylar Sokol.
And today's Skylar. Okay, so here we are. What is this? July 27th, 2020. And at this point, Sony and Microsoft have now both hosted their first respective major live stream conferences. We now have a much better idea of what these two major console platforms will be offering this coming holiday. And while some details like console price and release date have yet to be revealed, round one is now over.
Round one. Well, round one was when they revealed vague technical details about their consoles, right?
Yeah, I'm going to call this the first. I feel like if we were at E3 at this point, like you would call this maybe an E3 conference with everything that they've sort of released up to that point. You have like the console reveals, some initial like game teasers, a little bit of gameplay on some of the stuff, whatever. So let's start by asking you, which platform, I'm specifically to you, Skylar, for the general gamer, okay, which platform has done the better job so far of convincing gamers that they are the best console to pick up this coming holiday between the PlayStation 5 and the Xbox Series X?
So not my personal opinion. This is for the general gamer, not for me.
I want to ask you because I think we're both in a very interesting point where we're going into this console generation both not needing a console.
Right.
So
I don't you lie to me. You need that console for Halo.
We'll touch on that. But meaning, yeah, right now, general gamer, not necessarily me and you like in our cases.
So I think that's a hard question, right? Because there's a huge Halo population, right? Which I would call some general gamers. And I think for the people who love Halo, Microsoft won. And for every other gamer on the planet, Sony won.
Cool. What did you I already kind of know, but tell the audience what you loved. What did you like in that Sony conference?
I think Sony just presented they showed why their next generation console should exist. I think that's the biggest thing they did that Microsoft failed to do. They showed this is why we made a next-gen console, and these are the games it will support. Microsoft was like, here's an Xbox One with maybe better graphics, and we didn't really demonstrate why it needs to exist.
Yeah, I think, yes. I think we're going to end up touching on a few things really that go into this, but I think that the three main points to kind of look at that is like sort of the games that were showed, right? Like the game selection that they kind of put on display for the two platforms. Like you said, both of these consoles have, in some respects, very significant hardware improvements over last gen, and I think how they both demonstrated the utilization of that hardware and why that hardware needed to exist, very different between the two of them.
Yeah, I didn't even see anything from the Microsoft conference that made me think, oh, this hardware is better.
Totally agree. I mean, so this also touches on the business model that really these two are going in with, right? Like Microsoft has, like literally today, Phil Spencer retweeted this article from Tom Warren, a games reporter. And basically in the article, he literally calls out, Microsoft doesn't care if you buy a Series X. They just care if you subscribe to Game Pass.
And if that's the case, they did that. They said all of these games are on Game Pass. They showed a bunch of really cool looking games, not necessarily next-gen looking games, except for maybe Avowed. But they showed some cool looking games, and they said they're all on Game Pass. And if their only goal is to get people to buy Game Pass, then they probably succeeded. But that's a strange goal.
It's definitely a different goal, right? Like definitely a business model that we have yet to really see in the game space. Like you see Stadia doing stuff. But anyway, we'll get to that in a sec. So for me, I think if you literally ask which platform, and we're not even going to talk about the business models and price or anything, but just if you literally say which platform sold the hardware better, right? Like the need for you to have the hardware better. I think it was clearly Sony.
I mean, show me like 30 seconds of that Ratchet and Clank trailer, and that was a better hardware showcase than the entire Xbox conference.
So that's a great point, right? The major, in my opinion, the most significant hardware improvement this generation is the SSD.
Yep.
And the PlayStation 5 has been, as it's been widely reported, gets 5 gigs of transfer speed a second uncompressed, right? Compress, it's 10 gigs.
Like, do you want to? So what? Current generation does what? Just to say, just for.
So I don't remember exactly what the metric is. I just remember that in Mark Cerny's presentation when he divulged these details like a couple months ago, right? He said it takes the PlayStation 4 20 seconds to get 1 gig off the disc because it's a mechanical hard drive, right? It takes the PlayStation 5 0.2 seconds to get 2 gigs off the fucking disc.
It's insane. It's insane.
But that's because, I mean, for people who don't know, we're not going to break down how SSDs work, but that's a combination of 1, just SSD technology and how that works, and 2, Sony having like a fucking phenomenal one inside of the PlayStation 5.
Yep.
The Xbox has a very good one at like essentially half the raw values of what Sony has. And they've also talked about Xbox velocity architecture and how they're being clever about like what they need to move from hard drive to the GPU and all that stuff. So it remains to be seen, especially like on third-party games that like are on both consoles, exactly how much of an improvement it is on one console or the other.
It sounds like the PlayStation's is easier to use though. From an API perspective, it sounds like it'll be harder to develop for the Xbox's hardware improvements. If you're saying they're like fixing like the load balance, it sounds like you're gonna have to deal with that maybe in how you allocate things. Whereas on the PlayStation, you're just always going to that SSD.
I think the reality is that if you're a third-party developer who's targeting both of these platforms, you're probably going to design with the least common denominator in mind, right? Like you're not going to like design a version, like you're not going to literally, you know what I mean?
We don't care about that. We care about the games that are made for these consoles, the games that are taking the most advantage of the hardware.
Exactly. So getting back to that point, you bring up Ratchet and Clank. For those who maybe aren't immediately aware of why Skylar brings up that example, Ratchet and Clank, I think it's called a Rift Apart, demonstrated in its gameplay. There was this mechanic where Ratchet could like tear a hole in space and jump through it, and immediately in one, like when he was moving through significant parts, like in like a whole different kind of level, if you will, you could see it took like a second or so. He's like in space flying through the portal, a second or two. But
it was definitely like a second or less. It wasn't
very briefly. You literally delete, if you will, the entire space that was behind you and render the world you're about to come into.
And it was loading really detailed environments. It wasn't loading like
extremely detailed,
like a quick pass,
hundreds
like
of megabytes,
right.
Hundreds of megabytes for sure. And extremely fluid. Like you could tell from the demo, you could see like some things that indicated this is still a game in progress, just to say it was for sure real. Like it was not faked. Like that was definitely like a great example, great utilization, great case for why you need to pick up a PlayStation 5 to experience this game. Like you cannot do that on a PlayStation 4.
Yeah, and let's say another thing, like a lot of the trailers for the PlayStation had a lot of gameplay. They were almost all gameplay focused and showcasing the new console. Many of the Xbox trailers were strictly cinematic or with very minimal gameplay, not only saying to me that they aren't able to demonstrate like the next genesis of this console, but also that these games aren't even close to being ready. Whereas the PlayStation's games looked close. The Xbox showed like Halo, which I'm sure we'll have a conversation about that later, but I'm not going to say that game looked like it was ready. And then like and like I didn't see any games they really showed that looked ready, that looked like they could be released soon. Most of them were cinematic trailers, and unless that was a marketing ploy, I don't think they did a good job of making me confident that they're even going to have like Avowed in the next 2 years.
Yeah, so on that very note, one thing that's interesting of the games that Microsoft showed, which I agree a lot was cinematic stuff, when they showed those teaser reels, if you will, for a lot of those games, At the end, at the bottom, you could see sort of the platforms that were being targeted. For example, on Halo, you see Xbox One, Xbox Series X, and all the stuff, Steam, whatever. But on the like Avowed, Fable, the other one that you mentioned, Everwild, the one from Rare, for example. Those were three that I thought looked very interesting.
Yeah.
Forza, also the one that came on right after Halo, which looked great, but came on right after.
I mean, that's Forza always, right? Like they don't.
Yeah.
That game always looks great. Yeah.
None of those had Xbox One on the bottom, which in my opinion communicates two things. One is they're not coming soon because Microsoft has communicated that they would like their first-party studio games that are releasing in the next year or two, they would like to be able to be played on Xbox One as well.
I mean, you can get me started on how bad of a decision I think that is personally. But.
Yeah, so actually that's a thing we'll touch on here, but just to close out that thought, just to your point, the fact that they're communicating that it's not going to support Xbox One means that thing's not coming soon.
No,
right?
It's not close, right?
A couple years. Now let's just jump into that point that you just made, because I think that's another significant one. Sony has declared about a month back-ish that their first-party studios would be making games that were exclusive to the PlayStation 5, i.e. not backwards compatible to the PlayStation 4. Microsoft, on the other hand, has said that, like I just said, next year or two, they'd like any games coming out of the first-party studios to be also backwards compatible on the Xbox One, also on PC, like they're releasing things on Steam. Very different strategies there. And I think this is an example. I mean, Halo Infinite is a great example, and we'll compare. So we already talked about Ratchet and Clank and how that like directly leveraged the benefits of There's also later on in the Sony press conference, there was the new Horizon Zero Dawn game. I can't remember.
That looked amazing.
So that was gameplay, like that was in-engine gameplay footage. Digital Foundry did a breakdown demonstrating that, like, you could also again see hiccups that are like work in progress game. So it's very much still in there. It looked phenomenal, and whatever. These are again like you take those experiences, then you compare them to Halo. Now Halo's targeting a very different thing. It's got a big open world. They're trying to target 60 frames per second with 2 players split screen, right? That's very different than like a single player, like 30 FPS kind of a game, but still, so everyone talks.
Whoa, 30 FPS, 60 FPS.
So Horizon Zero Dawn is 60?
On PS5, I guarantee you it will be.
Oh, maybe it will be. At that, and that demo is running at 30, so I assume they keep doing it at 30. Yeah. But I mean, it could be that maybe they'll target it at 60. But
I would be surprised.
In that demo, I thought the first game it was both.
Well,
30.
the first, last generation was 30, but a lot of the consoles have said that this generation is targeting 60.
The point just being that they're targeting different technical achievements on some levels of scope, if you will. That being said, the whole internet is ablaze about Halo Infinite's shitty graphics, and Digital Foundry did a breakdown on exactly why that was. And to put it very simply, it has a lot to do with the lighting technique being used on in Halo Infinite, which is a dynamic lighting system, which is implemented in a way that's very last gen. And they were saying, in our opinion, this is a big indication of this game attempting to support the old hardware. Oof. And at the same time, in a sense, like it seems as if they're really just waiting on ray tracing here, if that makes sense.
But I can't believe that, because some of the textures I saw in that video, I took some screen grabs, were horrible, and they had nothing to do with the lighting.
So they called that out too, like in the sense of like the materials being used and stuff.
They were so low resolution, and they didn't have like realism to them at all. Yeah.
But the thing he breaks down is that those textures are physically based rendered textures, PBR textures, that are extremely dependent on lighting to bring out the life in them, basically. He uses the example of Metro Exodus, which Metro Exodus, if you don't have a ray tracing computer, uses the same dynamic lighting techniques. And he puts up a picture of it, and it looks like, you look at it and you're like, is that like PS2, PS3? Kind of like if you take some of those Halo Infinite screenshots and you just stop them, you're like, is this like 360 era? Like, what the fuck am I looking at?
Right.
Same thing. And then they turn on ray tracing in Metro Exodus, and all of a sudden, there you go.
But we shouldn't even be having this discussion, right? Because for the first gameplay reveal of your flagship next-gen game, you should be showing it at the highest level you possibly can.
Well, not only that, right? But Halo Infinite is not shipping with ray tracing. So let's say Halo Infinite ships with the Xbox Series X, right? The Series X, what could be the main, like if you have an Xbox One X and an Xbox One, you can still play Halo Infinite at 60 frames per second, granted at a lesser resolution than 4K, right? But you can still play Halo Infinite open world at 60 frames per second. The benefit that you would really get for Halo Infinite on the Xbox Series X is the ray tracing, right? Because the ray tracing processor that's on the Xbox Series X would be able to provide you with that. Bam! Wow, that's significantly better graphics for Halo Infinite on the Series X compared to Xbox One. But if the game is not shipping with that, so meaning if there is a patch after the fact,
Oof.
like this is there's just literally, right, very minimal reason to have a Series X over a 1X right now for the Halo Infinite campaign open world that we saw. We still haven't seen.
I mean,
we
I
still
feel like
haven't
I
seen
need
something
like a
that
Game
but-
Boy to run that game. I don't even need a Xbox One. Give
Well,
me
I
like
mean,
an original
Game Boy plus
Xbox.
Well, at this point, Game Boys might be getting close to an Xbox One.
I mean, like, I don't know, like that trailer, like if you put it next to some of the like Halo 3 graphics, it looks pretty equivalent.
No, my theory is that 343 is looking at like how much effort do we need to put in to make this dynamic lighting system that's last gen, look good and pop, or do we just essentially eat it and the graphics suck until ray tracing comes?
Yeah.
You know
But,
what
I
I
mean,
mean?
honestly, we should have a future podcast where we discuss this Halo trailer. Let's get back to our console war. And one thing I'm interested in your opinion on is hardware design, is the look. We gotta talk about the look.
Yeah, first of all, like straight looks, like I really am gonna give it to PlayStation in the style department. Like the Xbox is pretty
style.
unimaginative on that front.
But
however,
like, when you saw that PlayStation hardware, like how big do you think it was? That thing looked sleek. That thing looked like Wii size.
Yeah, but now it's huge as fuck.
You
Yeah,
see it
everyone
next to the
realizes how
TV?
big it is.
It's like
It's fucking 10 pounds, dude.
They like it was
Alienware.
stylish before it was fucking 10 feet tall or whatever.
Yeah, well, that's what I was gonna say. Now, in hindsight, like the Xbox Series X is not fundamentally like one edge of it much wider than a controller. It's a bench. It's more or less like a controller width. So I think I'm gonna take a neat little box in my corner over that fucking gigano like disc like
You and me both,
DVD
yeah.
router.
When you see your like friend's living room and he's got this PS5 nicely tucked in, you'll be like, yeah, that's sick. But you'll be like, I'm
Dude.
happy that my Xbox Series X takes up like one console's worth of space rather than 3.
And the other thing that I hope they have figured out this time, but the PlayStation 4s got loud as fuck with their fans. Like I would watch YouTube videos of people reviewing those games, and frequently they'd like make a joke out of like, "Oh, there it goes," And I'll give Xbox that. Even my potato Xbox Durango, like I never hear that shit. So
Yeah.
anyway, the point being, we'll see from a style perspective and like imaginative like design perspective, PlayStation wins. But from a practicality and like what do I actually want on my desk, it's probably the Xbox.
It's like Ferrari versus Subaru or some shit, right?
Yes. Yeah, except that's probably like a fucking Hummer or some shit, like a Cybertruck versus my like little Echo
Cybertruck versus like Honda Civic.
So yeah, I that's probably my answer. I hope this generation to finally own them all, and
Sure.
because I really want to really experience the so actually this is another point. I think that the Sony studios are continued to communicate their focus on these like single player experiences, which I think I think there are things here that no matter what platform you're a fan of, or however, if you're a PC guy, that there are things to applaud. The fact that like one publisher's focusing, at least Sony has been and is now continuing to focus on these like and push these single player experiences. That's fantastic. That was something that like I remember 8 years ago people saying like those are going to go away forever. It's great that somebody did that.
And those games are regularly rated as the best games of the year. Those games are regularly
genre defining, right? Like high quality stuff. And now I will give it to Microsoft. Everwild, Avowed, and Fable are all not what I usually like. I think last gen kind of categorized Microsoft like these like multiplayer Gears, Halo kind of stuff. So props there. Like, and we still haven't seen the other.
Let me give
or
you a
the fuck
theory
10
though,
studios.
some like dark
Let's hear
web
it.
theory, right?
Dark web theory.
PlayStation, Sony's conference was so good and showed off so many single player games that Microsoft felt like the only way they could possibly to compete was to show off these single player experience games they have in development, which do we even know if they're exclusives? I don't know. Maybe
You mean
timed
to-
exclusives, but we
to-
don't know if they're exclusive to Microsoft.
Oh, like
consoles,
will they
right?
come to PlayStation?
Right.
Oh, that would be interesting.
I
mean, Microsoft has said they said we would love to put some Xbox games and
Right.
Xbox Game Pass on there.
Sure. And so anyway, the theory though is that they had to compete with Sony. So rather than showing games that would be launching with the Xbox Series X, they showed these games that may be far out but do compete with Sony in that style of game.
Yeah, I mean, we know that there's a Sony event coming August 6th, and we know that Microsoft has said there's an August event for them as well. So this is not over.
Tune in for the round 2 podcast.
The
after
round
those
2
two
podcast.
events.
But for now, for round 1, I definitely think Sony is doing a better job like giving a person a reason to buy it. Now though, let's talk about the business reality, because I think what Sony is demonstrating is that this is a premium piece of hardware with its crazy SSD. They're enabling their first-party studios to really go deep on. They're less restricted creatively, not only by the hardware but also by
real next gen games.
And the other thing that's really important with this SSD and some of this other technology that's coming out, like Unreal Engine 5, which we don't know. Like, I know new Horizon Zero Dawn uses the Decima engine, but I'm sure all of these engines are trying to figure out something similar to what Unreal is figuring out with their Lumen system and their, I can't remember the Nanite system, where it's like there's technologies at a high level, without getting into technical details, technologies that enable creators to iterate faster, to make games faster. And if you are hyper focused on a platform target like the PlayStation 5 that has the SSD that it has, you basically don't need to spend as much time doing the design tricks and creating the game mechanisms to circumvent the hardware restrictions that you find last gen or just like on old PCs. And that's just that we have last generation as proof that these first party Sony studios are capable of making fantastic experiences, and these decisions by Sony is just enabling them to do that more so, right?
Yeah.
Now I will tell you, this is a different what the purpose of these fantastic genre defining experiences that the first party Sony studios are doing is to give you a reason to buy the PlayStation, right? Like, let's say the PlayStation 5's $500. That's not cheap for the gamer the kind of person who like already thinks spending $100 is a lot too much on gaming, right? Like 500's like, ooh,
although
big
the
investment.
Sony consoles have always been like premium priced, or at least have been known to be premium priced, right? So I think the Sony console people who are committed to those consoles aren't going to be like surprised.
Yeah. Yeah, hopefully. But like if you look at the model, it's like, here's 500 and we make you fantastic games on this platform that you can only play here to convince you to do it.
Consistently for the life cycle of the console.
Yes. Yeah, at least that's definitely what they demonstrated the last console. And I think there's reason to say, I think you could say that prior to that too. Like PlayStation 3, etc.
Yeah, I mean, like Ghost of Tsushima, extremely good game, right? I don't know, it's PlayStation exclusive. Just came out like literally now and is like, people love it, right? Like they're doing it up till the fucking release of their next console.
Now I read an article before we started here where when PlayStation 4 came out, because I think it's relatively well known that the consoles, when they come out, lose money. Like per unit sold, the platform holders lose money on the console. But they recoup it in the subscription services cost, like before, like Xbox Live or PS Plus, whatever, PS Now, whatever it's called.
PS Plus still exists.
Okay, cool. And then and then game sales, right?
Yeah.
So the idea is, the Digital Foundry guys last gen unearthed the fact that at launch, the $400 PS4 lost Sony $60 a unit.
Wow.
That's how far back, right? So but the guy, when they interviewed one of the Sony guys, he said they expect, they recoup it with 1 year of subscription service and one game sold.
Yep.
So as long as they can do that, they recoup the cost there. It's like this, this razor and blades business model. I don't know if you heard that, but like basically you sell the razor at a loss, but you make money on the blades because they're forced to like continuously buy the blades, kind of a thing. So let's say Sony loses more or less that much money per console on the PS5. You need to make that investment. You need to buy those games. Xbox, on the other hand, let's assume they lose the same amount of money per console. They are trying to widen your possibilities. I don't know. In a lot of ways, they feel like they're trying to go Sega on us and turn into a software-only
To quote Donkey's recent video.
Oh, is that where I heard it from?
It's
video, swimming in my subconscious from somewhere.
Donkey said he thought Microsoft was trying to go Sega and go software only, and he wouldn't be surprised. And honestly, I wouldn't either. Like, they own Windows, dude. Why not just move into the PC market?
Well, and they've like totally embraced. It was glossed over from all of the Craig Brute memes, but like Halo Infinite's launching day and date on fucking Steam. Like last gen, that'd be fucking crazy.
And you want to know what? You know where it's gonna look and run the best?
On Steam.
is on PC, whether it's on Steam or Microsoft Store. But like,
no, 100%, man.
Right.
So, and that's what they continuously say. I don't. Like on one hand, I was saying everyone should be happy and applaud the success that Sony and their studios are having for the experiences they're pulling. I feel just as much so everyone should be happy about the fact that there's some major AAA publisher that's providing so much immense value for fucking $15 a month. Like, it's crazy that you can play all of those games on, like, I think the winner of the Xbox showcase, like the best thing shown, was fucking that Game Pass is crazy cool.
But I have a question, right? Like, if for Game Pass to exist, Halo Infinite looks worse, and maybe like the gameplay, it will probably be good. Like, it's fucking Halo. It looked like it was just Halo, maybe add a grappling hook, right? Like, it's gonna be Halo, but if it looks worse than it could, then it could in a next-gen situation, right? Like, if Halo Infinite, which looks like it's on track now to look worse than some current-gen games, like Death Stranding, for example, would you be willing to sacrifice that for Game Pass?
I mean, that's a tough one. I don't know. How would you say... like, what's the angle of that you think that it's taking a hit because of Game Pass, just from the perspective of they want to hit it as wide of a market share as possible?
I mean, even just developing a game cross-platform for PC requires a lot of extra work, right? And maybe that they don't have as much resources to spend on like art or whatever, right?
Yeah,
or if scope even like game length could be affected. Who knows if they're spending less money on that, either because they know Game Pass gives them a specific amount of money, but not like it can't recoup the cost of like the most expensive possible game. Maybe, I don't know, right? These are the kinds of things you have to theorize after seeing this demo.
That question, if you rephrase that question to say like, am I okay with the fact that Halo takes a hit graphically in order to support like the lower tier Xboxes, basically, right?
Or in order for Game Pass to exist.
Yeah. I think that's a tough one. Like in that particular example, like I can't stop. Every time I see that campaign footage, I want to play it. Like, I want to play the game.
Of course you do. Because then you don't have to worry about just looking at it.
Well, the thing about that is, like, now on the other hand, like, gameplay is superior for me, but I would, if I imagine the opportunity, let's say the theoretical possibility that there's like this beautifully looking Halo ring out there, you know, and like beautiful like Forerunner artifacts. I mean, like, if you could really make that world so much more immersive through the graphics somehow, and I could miss out on that, you know, that's definitely a bummer. And I, you know, I just, there's like you said, I think we need to do a whole nother Halo Infinite conversation,
And
because
we
I
will.
think there's stuff there. But yeah, that's hard to say. I just, like I said, since gameplay's my favorite thing. Like for Halo Infinite in particular, my takeaway was like literally when I saw it live, and my reactions on YouTube, for those who are wondering, like when I saw it live, I was just completely enthralled. When people slowed it down and we looked at the graphics, basically what I came away with was like 343 nailed everything but the graphics, and the graphics have me feeling like shit, should this be delayed? You know what I mean?
Right.
Like,
well, yeah. And,
so,
and that's sort of why at the beginning I opened with, for Halo people, Xbox One, because they showed more Halo, and most of the Halo community, as I've gleaned, wants just more Halo, and not like more Halo 5. They want like more real Halo, and I think they showed that. But I also wonder, like, for somebody who doesn't care that much about Halo, did that look like a game that like you're really excited to play? Like Lyric, who's like one of the most popular Twitch streamers and like very well respected in the gaming community and has very good taste in games generally, said that Halo was not even in like what he thought were the highlights of the Microsoft conference because it was so unexciting for him. And he likes Halo. He's played every Halo game, right? Like this isn't like someone who like bars Halo from their life or whatever, right?
No, yeah, this I think touches on that strategy. Before, back in the day, if Microsoft was doing like what PlayStation is doing, which is what they've traditionally done, like if the most important thing was to move hardware, right, to get you invested in their platform, because once you if you can buy their console, every other purchase made on that ecosystem, Sony's taking a chunk, right? That's how they make their money, right?
Oh yeah,
including the third-party games. So those first-party games were like critical to moving that hardware, making that investment in the platform. Now this is more like Halo's, honestly, as part of Microsoft's strategy. I just don't think it's the same thing anymore. It's more of just like, here's Game Pass. It's got a lot of stuff, including Halo. Like, oh,
including
cool.
Halo.
Like,
and look, Halo is more Halo. I mean? It's not anything more than more Halo, but it's more Halo.
It's Halo. Yes. It's like, here's Halo. It is Halo, and it's part of Game Pass. You know what I mean?
It's Halo Assassin's Creed, but it's still Halo. Here you go.
like for example, like quite frankly, if Halo Infinite totally sucks, there's still a fuck ton of value in Game Pass. If God of War, Horizon Zero Dawn, and like the next Uncharted or something all flop, PlayStation's fucked.
Right.
Like they're totally fucked.
Well,
so
it's
just like, you know what I mean? Like it's just a totally different like strategy, and I think it's interesting.
I mean, but for me, from a gamer perspective, right, I hate the strategy that results in what I view as worse games, and the Microsoft strategy is, in my opinion, going to result in worse games.
Yeah, we should do a whole nother podcast on like the potential long-term effects of people moving to this. Like this is a whole nother thing. Like if you going into this year, right? So before COVID hit, which we all know like was very positive in regards to like people investing into gaming stuff, like spending money and time in it. Xbox had 10 million monthly active Game Pass users.
Crazy.
Right? And that's before this. So if you think, right, eventually if that's a transition to like a $15 a month for everybody, $150 million a month off of Game Pass is fucking crazy, you know? And that's, so if I wouldn't be surprised if by the end of this generation, maybe we first of all see Microsoft totally leave hardware, maybe. And then two, like that their monthly active user count that they care so much about is through the roof. Like you're maybe transitioning to a world where you've got PC as the premium experience, you know, like high-end experience. And then Nintendo.
And then like lives over here who will never die because they make very unique things, right?
Well, and what Microsoft wants to do is like we live on the high-end stuff. Like we're on PC, you know, we're all over PC. And then if xCloud and 5G and all this stuff enables it, we live everywhere else.
Right.
You know what I mean?
No, and that's a huge thing. Their streaming stuff that like is in the works is crazy, and they didn't mention that at all in their presentation, which blew my mind. Like Microsoft Flight Simulator is coming out in like fucking 2 weeks or something. And that game is like some of the most advanced streaming like game technology that's ever been used in history, and it's going to be like one of the best looking games ever because of all the cloud computing. And they didn't mention anything relating to that, and I couldn't believe it, honestly.
Yeah. No, I like I said, it's like a totally different thing. They're just basically like, hey, we have a bunch of great games. You pay $15 a month, you can get them.
They might not look good, but the gameplay will be fun at least.
Yeah, like I said, I think that, I don't know, so far we haven't seen, very interestingly, Halo Infinite multiplayer, which that when a Halo game comes out, the thing that gets the most like traction in like all these other games, right?
Yeah.
Like Call of Duty has a campaign, but goodness gracious, that pales in comparison to like the relative importance of the multiplayer within the general gaming sphere. So and like I said, we'll have a Halo Infinite podcast. Yep. That one, I think, they don't need to use those same lighting techniques. Maybe it'll look. We're gonna get the multiplayer. And we're gonna be like, why the fuck does this look so good? And the campaign looks like trash.
See. Yeah, I hope so. I really hope so, because I don't think that Halo Infinite. I mean, if Halo looks like it did in that trailer when it comes out, it's not like.
Dude, yeah.
I'm very worried for Halo's future.
It was like a 4-month-old build and all this shit, but like in my opinion, that build looked like alpha.
Or
like
worse,
I don't think
alpha, right?
Yeah,
I would
like
not
that's
have
like
shown
alpha
that.
footage.
If like we were about to show off our game and that was what we had, I would say nope, let's not show it off.
Yeah, not yet.
Right, let's make a pre-rendered cinematic trailer if we have to.
But for like a AAA studio, like if me and you made that, we could be like, we're kind of cool.
AAA. This isn't just a AAA studio, right? This isn't just like fucking a AAA studio that isn't tied to a console publisher, right? This is a Microsoft-owned AAA studio.
And dude, it's Halo.
It's Halo. Like, it's their biggest game.
It's not. Yeah. So like it. You never know. Also, like COVID, it'd be like we'll theorize about that, like how that could have impacted all that stuff. But like, anyway point being, I think this conversation's highlighted round one. I think we're going to give to Sony so far, generally, but they're very different realities, and I hope you guys all enjoyed that conversation.
But, I mean, from my perspective, for the gamer, I don't care about business. I don't care about that. For the gamer looking to play fun games and unique next-gen experiences, which is what I think a console reveal should be, I think Sony won. There's a lot of caveats you presented that could give Microsoft advantage in other aspects, but in that perspective, I think Sony won hands down.
Yeah, if in the world where you just money's not a thing and everything like that,
right?
Because the last thing I'll touch on like we think like why would they continue to support the old generation? I've had 4 friends, including Ryan from work today. Shout out to Ryan, you're famous now.
Woo.
Tell me that, like, oh, so it's only for Halo's only. He's like, he watched the Halo reveal. He's like, oh, that's really cool. He's like, so it's only for the new Xbox? I'm like, no, it's actually backwards compatible for all the other ones. He's like, yes. He's like, I didn't want to buy a new Xbox, blah, blah, blah. And basically 3 other people in addition to him have told me something along the same lines where they were basically like, oh, that's great. I'm going to try it. So
and maybe that's enough for Microsoft. Even if they can't make as good of a game, at least they can send it to get it.
Well, you have to also think, if you have 50 million Xbox Ones in the wild,
right?
And you can potentially get 10 million more Game Pass subscribers by Halo. So anyway, we'll talk about it more in the future.
Business is different. I you can talk. You always are the business
you're right.
guy. I'm the
you're
like
totally
person
right.
who's like, I'm here for the gamers, right?
Last thing I'll say, because we didn't touch on it, I thought Sony did I don't think Microsoft did any, honestly. Sony did a much better job of showing some cool indie stuff.
Yep, they did. They showed some great indie stuff. That game that was by that studio that looked like Pixar, first of all, that game was unbelievable. I can't remember what it was called, but the trailer was amazing. And then Stray, Annapurna published, my favorite publisher. That's by the way, I want to end this with our game of the conferences. So the game, and it's okay if your answer is Halo, but the game that you were most excited for, most hyped for coming out of the conferences, you first.
Okay, outside of Halo, okay.
First of all, Halo is your answer, right?
Yeah, Halo's my answer.
But yeah, sure.
Loved the gameplay, basically, and everything else nailed it.
Yep.
For Sony, it was Ratchet and Clank.
Okay, sick.
I really thought that looked like a lot of fun, and like we said before, like an experience I'm not going to even be able to get on my PC, honestly. I don't think my
won't release
keep
it
up like that, even if it were on PC.
Right. Yeah. Okay, for me, and that's why I said this before I brought it up, it's Stray. Cyberpunk cat game, definitely my top game. Just because I love Annapurna, and that game looks like such. I watched the trailer again because I was showing it to someone. The world building in that trailer is like a world where humans are dead and robots rule the world, and they're like just going about their daily activities. But then you're playing as a stray cat with like a drone. Like I have no idea what that game's even gonna be.
Yeah, no, I thought it was a really
unique.
Really unique world
I
building.
really hope that game won't be a PlayStation exclusive, but it probably will be.
Well, yeah.
Most of Annapurna's games have eventually come to PC. Journey, it only took like 10 years. So maybe I'll play Stray.
Sayonara Wild Hearts?
That's true. That was PC from the beginning, I believe.
Okay.
But yeah. Anyway, so where
very
can people
cool
find us?
Yes, you can find us at koalaentertainment.com. There you have links to all our social media, including Twitter and Instagram at KOKoala_ENT. We right now, at the time of posting this giveaway, this podcast on July 27th, 28th, whenever you hear it, we have 3 giveaways in rotation. Follow us on our social media profiles to get in on the goodness. We give shit away regularly because we're crazy and because it definitely seems to make you guys happy. It's on
making you guys happy.
Right now we have one going. We have Craig the Brute from Halo Infinite partnering with us to give away $100 on Twitter.
Craig the Brute, the worst looking character in the trailer.
Dude, now they have to keep him. They got to fucking put like Craig on like some
be an Easter egg or something, or like on a poster. He has to be like the president of the in the Halo universe.
It would be great. Anyway, yeah. Or when you are co-op with somebody, they join in and they're Craig the Brute.
Right.
Like, okay. You can also, at our website, koalaentertainment.com, you can join our Discord. That is the hip and happening place for all of the things related to our game and our game universe. Some lore details coming down. They will become increasingly important. Increasingly more goodness coming down the pipe. Yes. And merch. There on our website, you can find KO Koala Entertainment merch.
If you join the Discord and get lucky and get into Cryptic Bonnet, then you'll get to see a brand new exclusive lore reward coming tomorrow.
Yes. If you join quick, they're going to hit their milestone reward.
They already hit it.
The next little lore Oh, they did?
Mm-hmm.
Bang! So it's dropping tomorrow for sure. You get the next little lore tidbit surrounding the universe of our game.
Marcus, if Craig is Marcus the okay telling me to shut the fuck up and that Craig is beautiful and I shouldn't diss him, I would like to say I was not dissing Craig. Craig is my favorite thing that came out of that trailer. So, like, I would buy Craig Simulator for sure before I bought Halo Infinite so far with that trailer.
Long live Craig.
Long live Craig. All right. Bye, everyone. Thanks for listening. This was a long one, but it was a
good one.
Round 1. We'll have round 2 coming.
Yeah.
Tune in for whatever we talk about next week.
We'll see you.
Bye. All right. Cool.
That one was fun. I want to listen to that one again. So.
Yeah.
I think we do.